This is the Snodgrass podcast. Thank you guys for coming back today. I have the most interesting guest I think that I've ever introduced to you on the Snodgrass podcast, Mr. Perry Marshall out of Chicago, Illinois, baby. He is going to rock your world. And before I get into that, though, let's go over to the Snodgrass channel on YouTube and subscribe. Make sure you hit that subscription button, ring that bell, see all the notifications that come out each week. We're coming out with some great content videos for you, teaching videos, creative videos, documentary videos, along with this podcast. You guys are not going to want to miss this. We got some great content for you. So I'm going to actually read Perry Marshall's bio. I never do this, but his bio is so interesting to me that you guys need to take notes on how he articulates his bio of himself. So Perry Marshall is one of the most expensive business strategists in the world. He is endorsed in FORBES and INC Magazine. He's authored 8 books. At London's Royal Society, he announced the world's largest science research challenge, the $10 million Evolution 2.0 prize. And he has also reinvented the Pareto Principle, and he published a Harvard Business Review in his Google book, and he laid the foundations for the $100 billion pay-per-click industry. He has a degree in engineering and lives with his family in Chicago. So this guy is off the charts, so interesting, and such wisdom from him. I learned so much, and you guys are going to as well. So here now is Mr. Perry Marshall. What's going on, Perry? How you doing, man?
We're going down some fun rabbit holes today, and I'm really glad to be here with you, Brett. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Heard so much about you. Read a couple of your books, 80/20, Sales and Marketing. Just read your new book, Memos from the Head Office. Awesome content. I know you have so many other books out there, and we're really going to maybe dive into a couple more of those. But just so excited to hear you, for you to be on the show. And I always start off with this question, Perry. It's a little bit deeper, but the first question I always ask is, who is Perry Marshall?
Well, Perry's a dad of 4 standard issue and 2 adopted kids. And I married my high school sweetheart who, when we were 17, she was the singer and I was the sound man, and she fell in love with my reverb. And I'm kind of a weird stir fry of engineer, marketer, scientist, armchair philosopher, theologian, mystic, kind of all spun up into one bizarre creature. So yeah, I guess we'll do our best to explain all that as we go here. So
yeah, definitely. I was definitely getting that from your books and from just some of the talks that I've listened to and your bio. You definitely talk about you've gotten into the science arena, definitely a faith man with this new book, Memos from the Head Office. You started your career out getting fired a couple times, laid off, an engineering background times. From Nebraska.
Yeah, 5 times exact. So,
and you started off in sales and marketing. So my first question was, sales and marketing, got into really direct sales and marketing in your entrepreneur career. And, you entered in this multi-billion-dollar now pay-per-click industry, but you have an engineering background, right? So, so talk to us about that. How did you get into this?
Well, my first business was when I was 14, and I had started building stereo equipment and had a very, very limited budget. And the only way I could try all of the experiments that I wanted to try was if I sold the last thing that I made and, made something else. And so I made a set of speakers and I put in a classified ad in the newspaper, and a guy came and bought them, and I'm off to the races. And that was what Michael Gerber calls a technician. Like, I wasn't really in it for the money or to build a proper business. It was like a technician passion. And I was super, super geeked out about the technical stuff. And that eventually caused me to get an electrical engineering degree. And on the way, I was actually selling my brand in a showroom at a local dealer. And so, I had some very early entrepreneur experiences, but things got interesting in college when my friend recruited me into Amway. And there's lots and lots of people whose first entrepreneur experience is some kind of MLM, you know, Mary Kay, Avon, Herbalife, Amway, whatever. And, you know, for the most part, to be quite frank, that world is a pink Kool-Aid machine. And it's, you know, it's like the junior college of entrepreneurship, right? Mm-hmm. But that said, it teaches you a lot of things that are hard to learn anywhere else. Okay, like a lot of things, and they're valuable things. In fact, you know, most of the really good marketers that I know, they have a couple of interesting things in common. Like the very best ones, a lot of them really like jazz. Okay, because jazz is very improvisational and very, you know, if you, to really even understand it, you kind of have to wrap your head around it, right? And the other thing that most of them have in common is some kind of really belly to belly sales experience, like being a Mormon missionary or selling Cutco knives, or like things, or MLM, like things that require an extreme level of on your feet. Like, okay, I got 15 seconds to tell a story, or this person's going to slam a door in my face. And right. And so these become the bedrock. So I worked as an acoustical engineer right out of college, and I designed speakers for Jeep and Chrysler and Honda and Mazda and Ford. And then I got laid off, and it's like, well, unless you want to move to some other city with your pregnant wife, you're going to have to like go into sales. So I went into sales, and then that was like when the real education began, because it was 2 years of bologna sandwiches and ramen soup. And I ended up getting fired from my first sales job after 2 years because it wasn't working. But I discovered direct marketing, like Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham and that whole world. And that, like, oh, this actually works. It was like, this is the real stuff. Mm-hmm. All that other, like all those $5 cassette tapes, those were just, you know, like kindergarten, right? So that's kind of how I got thrown into this world. And I gotta say, an electrical engineering degree is a great background for understanding Google, which I'm probably best known for my Google book. Like when I started using Google ads, I was like, well, I understand exactly what these people are trying to do, because I have an engineering background and a background in direct marketing. There's not very many people that have married those two things together. And like, oh, I know what to do with this. This is like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. So, well, that gets you to like age 32 or something. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, you basically spoke 14 years old to 32, and that was in about 5 minutes. So, and that's where your career started. You entered into this Google. Now, this was when Google wasn't this huge company. I mean, we're taking, what year is this? We're talking about just getting into it.
Well, we're talking 2002, when most people still haven't even heard of Google yet. Or maybe they've seen it around, but they don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
And they were not the 800-pound gorilla. They were this idealistic little company, and we're going to access the world's information. And don't be evil, like they still said that back then. They are evil now, but back then they just knew that they could become evil, and they weren't. And so, yeah, it was very early. And it even took the marketing world a couple of years to catch on to how big of a deal this was. And yeah, it was huge. It was the biggest thing in advertising in 50 years. And it was incredible to play with that and experiment with it and get traffic from it and get leads from it and teach people how to do it and, write the book on it and like figure out, like nobody knew how to use all this stuff. it was a completely new world. And so, yeah, that was just a magic carpet ride. It was also kind of scary because I became slightly famous. And I know everybody wants to be slightly famous, especially in the like with social media and everything, but if you become slightly famous, you will find it to be an unnerving experience. You're like,
Interesting.
what do I do with all these people? What is it exactly that they want from me?
Right.
How does this work? Right. And I don't want to overstate it. Like maybe every 6 months I'll be wandering around somewhere in an ice cream shop and somebody will go, "Are you Perry Marshall?" So, it's not like Tom Hanks or anything like that. But, when you're well known in an industry and you used to be a nobody, that's jarring. It's weird.
Definitely. Well, I have a quick question for you. So I've heard Bill Gates one time say maybe he had this idea. He might have been at the right place at the right time. No one had came out with this type of thing yet. And you talk about 2002. You had this idea. You have the engineering background, and maybe you're at the right place, the right time in history to kind of do this. So take yourself to today. Like, is there something that you're looking at today that maybe is the next thing that someone can, like yourself, dive into, that was the Google in 2002? We got all these different things now, but what's something that maybe you're focused on today that maybe is that right place, right time in history now?
Well, that's almost a riddle, but I'll give you a clue.
Yeah.
The clue is in what appears to be the intractable problems of the day. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like, if you go back to 2002 when Google Ads started, it's important to realize that was in the wake of the dot-com crash. Okay. And so, things really started getting crazy about 1999, and, the stock market, the NASDAQ went crazy, and all these ridiculous overvaluations, and the bubble burst. And then you're in the silent, like, a desert of after that. And that is exactly when the real innovation started to happen.
Gotcha.
In fact, a lot of the internet as we currently know it was really built then. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's a pattern there. And the pattern is you have bubble, and then you have bubble bursts, and then you think you're in purgatory, but you're actually in this very prolific stage that hasn't borne fruit yet.
Interesting.
Okay, and then you don't know what's happening next, except it's the people who are solving the immediate problems with the most elegant new ways of thinking that end up creating whole new industries, and they end up being colleagues together 20 years later, even though at first they just felt like they got thrown into something.
Yeah.
Okay, and so look at the problems that we have right now. It doesn't take any genius to figure out. We have a pandemic problem. We have a social media problem. We have a political polarization problem. We have huge numbers of people with all kinds of anxiety and stuff. Okay. And this is not news to anybody. All right. And I don't know whether to think of it as we're in a bubble or we're in a desert or even both. Okay. But what I can say is whatever it is now, it's going to change. And then, 2 or 3 years from now, it will manifest differently. And like whatever seeds that the now plants will have started growing, and they will turn into new things. And so for people listening, if you are working on these new things, you sort of kind of know who you are. You just doubt yourself a lot.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, like that's the best way I know how to put it. And like there might be one part of one of these problems that I just rattled off where you're like, okay, I don't know all these other things, but I do know that I know this one thing or these two little things. And I know that if I rub these two sticks together, I get fire. And it just seems like if more people could just see what just happened here, this would catch on. Well, sometimes it does. And sometimes it just like it's got to manifest in a different form or be packaged in a different way or be in a slightly different place and time. And then all of a sudden it can take off. And one thing I would say about, you talked about being in the right place at the right time. Well, when the when the opportunity to teach Google's touchdown pass was thrown to me, because I got invited to speak at a seminar, I had been doing football practice really hard for about 6 years. And I was prepared for that because I just knew that I needed to know as much as I possibly could about this. And there wasn't any ceiling on, well, okay, I think I know enough now, so I'm just going to stop. It was like my brain was a sponge, and I was, everywhere I went, everywhere I looked, it was like, how can I get better at doing this? How can I learn more about this? It doesn't matter whether I think I need to know this right now. I might need to know it for someday. And that's what it's like when you're in preparation for a big breakthrough.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's just the unseen hours. I mean, no one saw you at the practice, like, where
No.
I played sports. I'm a big sports guy, and it's like you wait for this big play at the end of the game, and here it is. You got 10 seconds on the clock, and you're gonna take the last shot. So,
and you may not. It may not even be obvious that that's the football, the throw of the football that actually matters.
Yeah.
Right. It's not necessarily 10 seconds before in the fourth quarter. And maybe not. In real life, often not. You don't know.
Yes, definitely. Awesome. Well, thanks for that. That was just kind of off the cuff question, but I was just interested in picking your brain, your wisdom on that. So you wrote a book, and I read this book, 80/20 Sales and Marketing. I would listen to a talk on this actually today. It changed my life. I sent it to my team. I said, man, we gotta hone more in on this. This is such a good thing. And obviously, this concept 80/20 is not originally from you, but you took this and you reinvented it and implemented it into your sales and marketing and in other areas of your life. So how important has this been? How has this changed your life? In your talk, you said that if you grasp this, you will use this every hour of your life. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, that's true. So 80/20 might be the most underrated thing in business. So now what I can at least say is most people by now have at least heard of it. They have some basic idea that 20% of the customers spend 80% of the money, or 20% of the real estate investors own 80% of the real estate, that people sort of know that, but it is way more deeper and more pervasive, and to the point of affecting just about everything that you ever do. Okay. And if you really understand it, it will become the unifying explanation for pretty much anything that works well in business. It works because of 80/20. And my kids, my 11-year-old understands 80/20. They use 80/20 language because 80/20 is it's the math of inequality, and everything is unequal. So think about the United States and the Constitution and the modern idea about human rights is all oriented around the idea that everybody is created equal, which is a religious idea. And that idea is permeated everything. Okay. So if you could just stop for a second and think, well, how many things in our society work the way they do because we believe in this idea of equality? Like we have handicap parking and wheelchair ramps and like medical assistance and government programs and unemployment and insurance, like all of these things, right? And human rights and voting and democracy. Okay. So like you take this one idea and then you like rinse repeat 1,000 times and you get all of these things. Well, then what happens if you also understand inequality? Okay, because the whole physical world runs on inequality, and everything in business runs on inequality. And what if you were able to clearly distinguish, okay, these are the things in the world that I need to make as equal as possible. And these are the other things in the world where I need to harness the inequality as much as possible, because the inequality is not 2-to-1 or 5-to-1 or 10-to-1. It's 100-to-1. It's 1,000-to-1. It's 10,000-to-1. It's 1,000,000-to-1. Okay. So for example, the fact that there's a handful of people in the world who are worth almost $1 trillion is basically a law of physics. Okay. It's not an accident that Bezos or Elon Musk are worth that much money. The laws of 80-20 say if there's X amount of wealth in the world, 10% of it is going to be owned by 100 people. And you can't change this. All you can do is work with it and understand how it flows. And then and only then can you ever really solve poverty or really understand how to deal with these things. Now, I don't want to get into like a giant philosophical discussion. Let's make it super, super practical. So for example, the 80-20 rule leads to what in my book, 80-20 Sales and Marketing, I call the principle of the $2,700 espresso machine. And what that says is, if you own a Starbucks and 1,000 people a week buy a $5 latte, it's pretty much a law of physics. Like it's almost a law of the universe that one of them will spend $2,700 on an espresso machine.
Yeah.
Because they have the money, it's burning a hole in their pocket, they have an unscratchable coffee itch, and they want to give you that much money and get a stainless steel gleaming thing that they can, put in their kitchen. And then the next day they're going to come back to your Starbucks and buy another latte. Because and it's not even rational if you're Spock, like this probably makes no sense. Okay. But 80-20 says this is how the world is. In fact, 80-20 says, Spock, trust me, this is what they're going to do. And it's completely logical according to the logic of 80-20, not the logic of Spock, right? And so when you get this, you figure out how to use it. Well, some people will figure out how to make ridiculous amounts of money. Other people will figure out how to make a very comfortable living working 3 hours a day. Okay. And other people will figure out how to feed 100,000 starving kids. And it's incredibly powerful. And so like the best thing that I ever hear from people who read 80-20 Sales and Marketing is they go, oh my word, I never could look out the window and see the world the same way after I read that book. That's the goal. Like if you get it, in fact, some people don't get it. There's Amazon reviews where people are like, I don't get it. What's the big deal here? He didn't tell me anything new. It's like, you probably didn't understand what I was talking about. or either that or you're a lot smarter than you sound. But well, whatever. I mean, every book in the world has detractors, right?
Yeah.
But no, like when people get it, they get it. And it's like, oh my word, like I can't stop thinking about this. I can't stop noticing it. I can't stop talking about it. And the rabbit hole just goes deeper, 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 deeper. And so, yeah, it's really powerful. And I did something with 80/20 that nobody did in popular books or, in the wider world, which was, I said, 80/20 is fractal. Which means there's an 80/20 inside the 80/20 inside the 80/20. So there's levers inside of levers inside of levers inside of levers. So there really is 10,000 to 1 leverage points where, like, you literally can save, spend $1 and fix a squeak somewhere and have $100,000 worth of benefit. And you don't have to be a perfectionist, and it doesn't all have to be right.
No, I love it. I love it. That's awesome. And again, my mind just goes, you can use this in every area of your life, whether it's, you talked about an example of people buying shoes or the clothes that you wear, right? You only wear, right, 20% of your clothes, right? The money that you make. And I was thinking about the clients that we serve, the clients, they make us, 20% makes us to 80% of our money. So you can use this in every area. I would definitely highly recommend, guys, 80/20 sales and marketing. Check that out. It's just amazing. So Perry, I know we've talked a lot about marketing. You've gotten into sales and marketing. It's kind of what you're known for, the pay-per-click industry, the 80/20 rule. You have a lot of books on Google AdWords and sales and marketing. And you wrote this new book, which takes a completely shift, and it's not your typical book. It's the memos from the head office. And I'm a man of faith, Christian man, and gave my life to Christ at the age of 30, 11 years ago, and have gone down that narrow path. And I'm in the marketplace, and you're a man of faith. You're a pastor's kid, and heard you on an interview. You've went to a lot of different churches. You talked about you went to all black church, inner city church, seeker friendly church, traditional evangelical church. Yeah. And then obviously, this talks about listening to the voice of God in your business. And so this is such a different book. So I want to ask you this. This is a total shift, and maybe it's not like you. So what's been your feedback from this book, and why did you write this book, Memos from the Head Office?
Well, I've had a bunch of major shifts in my life and in my career that can only be attributed to what I like to call a memo from the head office, like capital H, capital O. And I like that term because words like God and Jesus and church are so loaded with baggage. Like they give some people PTSD, right? Whereas probably most people can at least go along with the idea that there are holy moments in your life that are inexplicable, and there are insights and intuitions or things that people say to you sometimes that can only be classified as totally inspired, and that whether you are ready to assign some theological or religious framework to it or not, we could all at least agree that, I don't think the world is here by accident, and I don't think we're here by accident, and I don't think my life and my career and my purpose is an accident. And I'm prepared to step into that and embrace some mystery. And so, like, probably the most significant conversation I ever had in my entire career was on a Friday in March of 2003. I had just read Richard Koch's 80/20 book, and 80/20 had been gone from this like little thing that you write on a napkin that didn't seem terribly important to like, oh my goodness, this is like the number one law of cause and effect in the universe. And all of a sudden, like, it explains all of these things, and it makes sales and marketing business a whole lot easier and a whole lot simpler. And so I had this big epiphany, and I was like, well, okay, I'm an engineer, I'm a geek, and I'm always trying to have formulas for stuff. And this is a math formula, except I don't like none of the math formulas I'm finding on the internet and stuff. They don't really seem to be describing what I think this really is. So how do you figure that out? And so I was obsessing about this. And the other thing that I was obsessing about that day was I had just had a big miniature financial victory in my business. Like most people with any kind of a successful business have had some kind of a big aha moment where something actually started to work. And I had had one of those moments, and I was thinking, well, how would I use my business to help this little project in Mozambique where there's a school and a church and a feeding program and an AIDS hospital. And so I was obsessing about a math problem and this Mozambique thing all day long. And I went to a music thing at church, and they're playing this music, and I'm swaying, and I'm a million miles away, and I'm thinking about calculus and Mozambique, and I'm kind of stuck on my math problem. And I look up, and this woman's making a beeline for me. And she goes, "Hi, my name is Vivian. The Lord gave me a word for you." I've never seen this woman in my life. I don't know who she is, other than apparently her name is Vivian. She's Black, in a mostly white church. And she goes, "The Lord told me that you're very good at math, and you're working on some kind of equation, some kind of formula, some kind of invention, and you're going to figure it out." And I'm like, I haven't told anybody about this. Like, I haven't even talked to my wife about this. Like, so like she seriously got my attention. And by the way, up to this point, I had grown up in a version of church that does not do this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, if you know anything about churches, like there's the ones that do and there's the ones that don't. And I was always like, I'd heard about it and I wasn't against it, but I didn't really have much of an opinion. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, like, dang, like this just happened to me. This just happened. How did that happen? Right. So I knew like this had my attention, like seriously fast. Right. And then she turns to walk away, and then she spins around. She goes, "Oh, and he told me something else too. You want to support missions, and God is going to bless your business so you can support missions." And now she really had me. And I just stared at her, and I was almost in tears. And I go, "If only you knew." And she goes, "He knows," sticks her finger up in the air, and just walks away. And wow. I stood there totally dumbfounded. I'm like, I'm an engineer. I'm an analytical guy. I am thinking like a woman just walked up to me, complete stranger, never seen her in my life. Later, I found out she'd never even been there before.
Wow.
She was there on a lark, like somebody nagged her to come hear her son play guitar until she finally went. Okay. And like, she didn't want to do this. She's like having an argument with God. Like, I don't want to talk to that guy. I don't know who these people are. I don't know if they'll throw me out, but she did it. Right. And like, dude, like that was a memo from the head office. Like, you should take it serious. So I did. And 3 years later, I figured out the math formula, and that is now the backbone of my 80-20 book. All of my consulting work. It got published in Harvard Business Review 3 years ago. And about 3 months later, I wrote the Google book. And then now remember, Google's this tiny little company. And then Google goes supernova, and that takes me supernova. And 5 years later, I've written the world's best-selling book on internet advertising.
Wow.
And so like all of this came from a 1-minute conversation with an African-American lady who didn't want to be there, that I'd never met before. who's reading me my mail.
Wow.
And so then you fast forward 18 years, and I write a book called Memos from the Head Office, and it's a whole bunch of my stories and like people like myself who had these experiences, and I made extra sure. So there are books like this, sort of a little bit like this out there, but there's several things that you're usually missing. First of all, they're almost never focused on business people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think nobody needs more faith than an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody exercises more faith than an entrepreneur. Okay. Secondly, everything in that book is very well documented. Names, dates, places, times, companies. Like there's almost no anonymous people in this book. Almost everybody, you want to look for them, you can go find them. Mm-hmm. You want to contact them on LinkedIn, you can contact them on LinkedIn. You want to verify their story, you can verify their story. There's scientific stuff in there. Like, oh, you want books to go read, go verify that this stuff actually happens, go read this, go read that. It's a little bit built for the skeptic. And then another thing that's very unusual about it is it's not written in any partisan religious language. It is written in accessible, anybody can read this. You could be a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a New Age, a burned out Catholic, a Lutheran, like whatever. Okay. And you will find a story or something that you can relate to. Because I didn't want any of those, like we've got enough polarization and division in the world as it is.
Yes.
And I just didn't want to add to it. I do talk about my beliefs and I'm upfront about those. And it's like, well, if you want to read about that, go to Appendix 1, like all that stuff is there. But I've gotten a lot of an appreciation where people like, thank you for writing a book that is not written in alienating religious jargon that I have to plow through in order to get what you're trying to say.
Yeah. No, again, I loved it. A lot of short stories from real people. And one thing that I really love, because I come from a church kind of like you. This isn't practiced that much in the churches that I've grown up in. But you give some really specific examples on how to practice this, how to do this, how to hear from the voice of God, which I really enjoyed that in your book as well.
Well, yeah. And I believe anybody can listen to God. Like a lot of people think that, oh, well, you got to get your theology right. You got to check all these boxes and you got to do all these rituals. Like, okay, I believe God can and does talk to almost anybody. My experience is that God doesn't talk to people that don't want to hear anything. Like if your windows are painted black from the inside out, you're on your own, buddy. But if you're open, then it can and does happen. And a lot of the book is about how do you put yourself in a spiritual and mental state where you can actually hear.
I love that. Awesome. So get that book, guys, Memos from the Head Office. And where can someone get that book at? Amazon, obviously.
Yeah. Amazon, Audible, Kindle, paperback.
Yep.
Any way you want it. In fact, you can go to perrymarshall.com/memos and get 3 free chapters and take a look. We've most of the stories are from my own business community. We have a lot of people who, they've like, we've collected these stories, and I know everybody in the book pretty much, and yeah, it's real. And I think that's very important. I just, being the engineer that I don't like fluffy, nice sounding stories from anonymous people that might have happened somewhere, sometime,
Yeah.
and nobody's really quite sure. Like, I don't like that. I think you should expect more than that, and you'll get that.
Yeah, definitely. Put some proof behind it. That's the engineer in you, some evidence. So awesome. Sounds good. Before we finish the show, Perry, one last question. So again, you have quite the bio. You've done Google AdWords business, written this book, Memos from the Head Office. You have a faith background. You talk about that. And then you've also entered the world of science, which I found very interesting. And we talked about this before the show. And you have the Evolution 2.0. And you actually put a challenge out there, which I was kind of digging into that and figuring out what is this challenge, the $10 million challenge out there, this Evolution 2.0 prize. So talk about, what is this challenge? What is this Evolution 2.0 about? Because this is, again, you've entered into this science arena that with this faith background, and talk to us about this.
So this started when my brother, who was a missionary in China and also had a master's degree in theology, so he had been trained to be a pastor, he discarded his faith. He's like, I don't believe this anymore. And we're both pastors' kids. And I visited him in China and we got into an argument. And I go, Brian, look at the hand at the end of your arm. This is a nice piece of engineering. You don't think this is an accumulation of random accidents, do you? And he goes, hold on. And he just comes right back at me with, everybody's had this argument with somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden we're having the creation evolution argument, which is pretty much right up there with gun control, gay rights, abortion, immigration, and COVID. It's like, I mean, it's like a really visceral discussion. And, it was the engineer in me that was speaking to him when I said that, because I look at the hand and I'm like, well, however the process happened, there's something really special going on here. And he's like, no, there's nothing special about this. This is just like, if you have enough monkeys and typewriters and billiard balls banging around in the universe, it's inevitable. And I had never been down that rabbit hole. And I thought, why don't you stop arguing with your brother? Because you guys are having a miserable trip, like having this argument. Mm-hmm. When you get home from China, Perry, you go figure this out. And I did. And you have to remember that I am doing that investigation as an electrical engineer who has a pretty substantial background in basic science to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, is it just monkeys and typewriters, or is there something more to it? And this became way more fascinating than I ever imagined. Okay? It just got more and more and more and more interesting. And that was 17 years ago. And so what's happened in the last third of my life is that I realized that there are some very, very basic fundamental questions in science that have never been answered. And the most fundamental question that I know how to ask is, where does code come from? Because all life is built on code, genetic code. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows how you get a code without a designer. But I am not, for a whole philosophical discussion that we don't have time for, I don't think it's really helpful in science to say, oh, well, God did it. If every time you have a science question that you can't answer, if you just say God did it, you're lazy. Okay, so this is kind of a conundrum. This is like a paradox. It's like, well, okay, like, did God have something to do with this? That's like one question, but how do we practice science in a way that furthers the human race and allows a scientist to do their job? And so I said, well, then you insist on an answer, like a real answer, instead of like making up stories.
Yeah.
Because what most people do on either side is they just make up a story.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so I put together a $10 million prize, and it's the largest fundamental science research prize in the world. And we announced it at the Royal Society in Great Britain, which is the oldest scientific organization in the world. And I've got judges from Harvard, Oxford, and MIT. And 40% of my life now is I'm a practicing scientist. I published my first paper in May. I go to scientific conferences, and I have all kinds of friends in science, and and they send me their papers. And there's some very, very important work that is coming out of this, and it has to do with not very important things like viruses and cancer and infectious diseases and just little trivial problems like those. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of what that project is about. And the left and the right have both really butchered this topic. And the only way that you can solve problems like this is to insist on a real answer. And so that's what we're doing. And it's attracted some really incredibly talented people. I'm friends with some of the best scientists in the world, and they like what I'm doing because it's about really solving the problems and not pretending to solve the problems.
Yeah.
And that is a great group of people to surround yourself with. I just promise you, if you assiduously pursue the truth in an honest way, the people that surround you will be an incredible group of people.
No, I love that. And again, you're not coming in with your, I guess, you have your own beliefs, but you're not the biased opinion, right? And that most either direction comes in with. So I love that. And you've gotten some great work. A lot of people have submitted feedback, and it's amazing. So can't wait. So have we gotten, where's this at now? The progress, maybe the challenge? Is this?
We get submissions every couple of weeks. Most of them are light years from solving it. We've had a few very interesting submissions. I've had a handful of very, very distinguished scientists say, I'm going to solve that thing. Or I think I know how to solve that thing, or, things of that nature. And it has opened up a whole world that I could have never imagined when I got into this.
Yeah.
And what I would generalize to anybody is, when you chase a mystery and you resolve to follow it wherever it leads, you will end up in places that no human being has ever been before. And your life will not be boring.
Love that. And your life definitely, just reading your bio, your life is very, very interesting, Perry. So thank you so much for being on the Snodgrass podcast, Perry. Guys, check out Perry's new book, Memos from the Head Office. Check out his other books too on Amazon or perrymarshall.com. Correct, Perry. And Perry, thank you so much again. I always like to end every show with a little fire round. So I have 4 questions for you. These are super short answers, 60 seconds or less. So your first question is this. On your bio, your very first sentence says, Perry Marshall is one of the most expensive business strategists in the world. So why are you so expensive?
When I was 17, I had a conversation with a friend, my friend's dad. And he explained to me that, so this is in 1986, by the way. And he says, I'm a management consultant and I charge $3,000 to $5,000 a day. And my jaw hit the floor. Right. And he goes, I don't charge that much money because I need more money. He said, I charge that much money so that when I tell a CEO what's wrong with his company, if he's paying me that much money, he takes notes. And it's really true. When you're in the advice business, the more you charge, the more seriously people take your advice.
I like that. Sounds good. All right, number 2, most interesting book you've read recently.
Top of the stack, it is Radical Son by David Horowitz, who was a far left Marxist activist most of his life. And then he left that world and embraced different political views. And that, like, I buy a lot of books and I'm very 80-20, which means 80% of them I barely read at all. But that book has held my attention. It's very interesting.
Interesting. Awesome. That sounds very interesting book. All right. 2 more. What is the favorite way you apply the 80-20 principle to your own personal life?
Subtraction. 80-20 says that 20% of what you're doing is moving you backwards, not forwards.
Interesting.
And the best thing you can do is stop doing. So I say no to a lot of things.
Wow. That's awesome. I'm going to take that down. So, all right, last one. Best piece of advice that you've been given from a mentor?
Tune into the head office every day and make it the first thing that you do every day. Like, however you understand God or the universe or the infinite or whatever you want to call it, if you make tuning your listening ear your first priority every day, it will change the way every day goes for you. It's the best habit you could ever cultivate. And I am heart attack serious about that. I am not just spouting a platitude. I am completely serious.
Love that. Love that. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Perry, for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast. God bless you, brother. Appreciate you. Wish you so much success. Guys, go get memos from the head office today. You're not going to regret it. So thanks, Perry.
Brett, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.